Okay, hi everyone, and more people may be coming in, but we'll start on time. So I'm going to share the screen. Um, and as I mentioned earlier, the topic is going to be about Samson, which is actually the Haftarah, and that's why I chose to teach it this week for this week's Parsha, which is Naso. So, and actually I'm writing my blog about it, but I haven't finished yet. Here we see Manoach and his wife, and she has no name, just like Noach's wife, right? It's interesting. The name is Manoach, and Noach also. Noach doesn't have a name either, and his wife, and then here's the angel, and we'll see the story in a minute. But first of all, because before we come to Samson, Samson is really a very interesting character, and in Israel, Samson really has been glorified, even though he's not, the most savory character in the book in terms of what he does. And so look in terms of what the glorious things are. And these are all stamps, right? So this stamp is him with a lion opening up the lion's jaw. By the way, notice how cheap the stamps were once upon a time, right? This one is 0.07, and we're talking about not dollars, we're talking about shekel. And here's Samson burning the little wolves or foxes, their tails. I mean, is this what we want to encourage our children to do? And here's Samson, of course, with Delilah. Okay, and I think this was done possibly when there was an opera. Yeah, this one up here. They had the Israeli opera, so which is I think it's I forget this French guy's name anyway. So this was not Bizet, I forget who it is. Maybe someone here knows who it is. But anyway, so this was when they had the opera. Where are we? Where is the location? All right. It begins with there was a man from Zorach, from the clan of the Danite, and his name was Manoach. All right. And the Spirit of the Lord began to drive him in the camp of Dan between Zorach and Eshtaol. And his kinsmen and all his father's household came down and bore him off. I mean, this is at the end, right? It begins in Judges 13, sorry. And then when he dies, and his kinsmen and all his father's household came and bore him off and buried him between Zorach and Eshtaol in the grave of Manoach, his father. And he led Israel for 20 years. And we have to realize that the judges of Israel, right? The judges of Israel are called judges, and the book is called Judges, but not all of them are really judges. And to call someone like Samson a judge is a little bit strange, but okay. So let's see what we're talking about. So this is your neighborhood, Stevie. Here's Samson. Here's Zarach, right? Not too far from Bethlehem. All right. Here's Zarach. The tribe of Dan is interesting because Dan actually moves between this area and further up north. So where is Eshtaol? Let's see where Eshtaol is. Oh, right here. So in other words, he more or less stays in the same area, right? Between Zorach and Eshtaol. And those of you who know the map of Israel, here's Ashdod, Ashkelon, where Stevie lives, and here's Gaza. Okay, so this gives you some sort of sense of what's going on. Okay, so he's there for 20 years, so that's quite a bit of time. So here is Samson slaying a Philistine with the jawbone of the ass, right? And this is, you can see the lion here. He's slaying a Philistine. I don't know why he said a lion, because he does slay a lion. But here it says the Philistines. Okay, it doesn't really matter. And here's a better picture of it from the back. And I thought it was an interesting quotation from Wallace Stevens, which is about poetry. Poetry is a violence within that protects us from a violence without. Isn't that amazing? It's the imagination pressing back against the pressure of reality. It seems, in the last analysis, to have something to do with our self-preservation. And that, no doubt, is why the expression of it, the sounds of its words, helps us live our lives. It's an amazing quotation, right? You might want to just look at it a little bit longer just to digest it. Who would even think of something like this? But to a certain degree, I mean, I find personally, when I'm creating something, whatever the creation might be, it sort of gets me away from whatever is happening, or reading a book or a fiction or something like this. So that the idea that poetry is a form of violence, right? Because something, and here you have, this is not exactly a poem, this is art, right? This is sculpture, and this is certainly violence, right? It's a violent picture. Okay, anyway, I thought that was very interesting, and I sort of paired the two together. Okay, and now here we have the lion, sorry. So here you have Samson fighting the lion, and he kills him with the jawbone of the ass. And this is a very famous picture. I'm not sure where it is, but it's Louis Cranach the Elder, 1520. Here's another picture of him. And this is Moses Lillian, all right? I don't know, you probably know Moses Lillian's, it's very, very well known. And usually you don't see a violent picture like this here. He's very well known for the picture of Herzl, right? Looking over in Tel Aviv, looking straight ahead. Very, very well known. Anyway, he has a Haggadah. I mean, he's very, very well known painter. And this is a little bit unusual for him to have a picture like this. And of course, to show you the strength of Samson, I couldn't resist this. You have Samsonite luggage. Do we still have Samsonite luggage? I don't know. Does it still exist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So notice the name. Isn't that a strange name? But the purpose is to show you the strength in the luggage. I think it's just such a great picture. And here again, you have Samson's. So notice all of the horrible pictures of him slaying 1,000 men and a lion. And I mean, that seems to be the major thing. So when we come to Judges 13 to 16, remember this, we're going to be talking about his mother. But so this is the famous son who's going to come out of this mother. Okay, so Louise, would you like to read chapter 13? From Judges.
Yeah. And there was a man from Zorah, from the clan of the Danite, and his name was Manoah. And his woman was barren. She had borne no child. And the messenger of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Look, pray, you are barren and have borne no child, but you shall conceive and bear a son. And now guard yourself, pray, and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat no unclean thing. For you are about to conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall touch his head, for the lad shall be a Nazarite of God from the womb. And he shall begin to rescue Israel from the hand of the Philistines.
Okay, so let's stop right there. And so what we have here is a whole bunch of conditions being given to her. And by the way, there in the parsha, although I don't emphasize that, but in the parsha there are also the laws of the Nazir. So this might be one of the reasons why the parsha, this is the haftarah for next week's, for this coming week's parsha, and it might have to do with the Nazarite, or the laws of the Nazarite. But notice, I started with all of the violence, and this guy is not supposed to drink. He shouldn't be eating bad things, right? And unclean.
His hair.
So this is that guy, and she is barren. All right. So in other words, you're having an angel coming from outside to tell her that she's going to be. And what story does that remind you of?
Sarah?
Yeah. God coming to tell Sarah. And then if you remember, Sarah laughs, right?
Right.
Okay. So what is her reaction? Go on. And the woman?
And the woman came and said to her husband, saying, A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of of a messenger of God, very fearsome. And I did not ask him from where he was, and his name he did not tell me. And Manoah entreated the Lord and said, Please, my master, the man of God whom you sent, let him pray, come again to us and teach us what we should do for the lad who is to be born.
Okay, so
And
stop there, right? But so what is his reaction in terms of his wife?
he
Speaking,
believes her.
he doesn't believe her, right? Or
Right,
this is like almost like mansplaining, not quite, no, not mansplaining, gaslighting, right? A little bit
right.
like gaslighting. Okay, all right, go on.
And God heeded Manoah's voice, and the messenger of God came again to the woman when she was sitting in the field, and Manoah, her husband, was not with her.
Okay,
And
so
the
what do we see? He doesn't, God doesn't listen. He heeded his voice, but when
but he
he
doesn't
again,
include the husband,
the
right?
husband not included. Go on.
And the woman hurried and ran and told her husband and said to him, Look, the man that came to me during the day has appeared to me. And Manoah arose and went after his wife and came to the man and said to him, Are you the man who spoke to the woman? And he said, I am. And Manoah said, Now may your word come true. What shall be the conduct of the lad and his acts?
So he
And
has
Manoah
to repeat. So all right. So he's gonna. We skip a lot here. He repeats everything that he told her. Go on.
And Manoah said to his woman, We are doomed to die, for we have seen God. And his woman said to him, Had the Lord desired to put us to death, he would not have taken from our hand burnt offering and grain offering, nor would he have shown us all these things, and at this time instructed us in this manner. And the woman bore a son, and she called his name Samson. And the lad grew up, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to drive him in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol.
Okay. So we have here, like a scene, a birth scene, right? It's giving us the background, very similar to the birth of Isaac, or a typical birth scene, which is very, very familiar to us in the Bible, about someone who one day is going to rescue the people of Israel, and the fact that he is to. Now, there's nothing here yet about the strength of his hair, right? It's just that he should not touch his his head with a razor. Okay, he shouldn't cut his hair. Okay, so here's a picture of the Annunciation. All right, now notice how she's dressed. Right, she's dressed really in. So one could understand if this is the way she's dressed when the angel approaches her. Now the angel looks very much like a little kid, right? But look at the face. Look at the face of this angel. What could one say about his face? Okay, whatever. Okay, anyway, this is Tintoretto. And it's almost like she's asking for it, sort of. And here's another picture with, I've shown you many times, Dick Laor, who takes these photographs. And this is her, and the angel of God came again unto the woman as she sat in the field, but Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So notice here, look what the angel looks like. She's sort of praying to him, and he looks like it's a completely different angel, right, than the other one that we saw. This is in her imagination.
Very fierce.
Yeah, very, very fierce. And she's dressed in red and blue. And she says here, Dick Laor says that she wanted to make her look similar to Mary, right? Why
Wow.
Mary? Because Mary conceives, right? Conceives through God, right? It's a virgin birth. So she wants the wife to look like she's conceiving through the angel, all right? So if we go back to, right, yeah.
I was just going to say the picture of the angel dressed in the black, he looks like the Grim Reaper.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Very threatening looking picture, absolutely.
It's very difficult to see the hooded figure with the wings coming out.
Right.
It's really dark. Can you make that just, yeah.
Here we go.
See, it's very different. She blended the two together.
Right. But notice his hands are on her.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But it's the thing with the hood and the pose and everything that
And
makes
the
it look like
wings with the claws coming out looks like
Yeah.
It looks like a raven or something. It looks like a bird of prey, really.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Wings.
it's really like, I think, the wheat sort of against the cake.
Right,
Mm.
right,
And that here, the white pieces or
right,
light
and
pieces.
Yeah.
right. So you have here something really very interesting, and you know, she wrote here. She was the one to make the wings of the angel featured in the photograph. All right. Okay. Anything else? Feathers, furry fabrics, shades of black and brown.
Right.
Okay, but if you go back, I want to just give you the whole idea of the fact that here she looks promiscuous, and here the angel looks like oh, look at this woman here, maybe we can have some fun together, right? He has this really strange look on the face. And
Yeah.
then we come
There-
to this picture
What
here.
is what is the
Wait.
what is the symbolism in the other picture of the bird and the cattle and
Here,
no, the next one.
this one here,
No, the
No.
previous one.
previous one.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, her. You see in the between the two of them, there's a ram and there's a bird and then there's cattle and they're all looking.
Oh, wow.
They good eyes. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? You're the one who noticed them.
Right.
I mean, it looks like, when Abraham was sacrificing Isaac, then the ram came and was stuck in a bush, and we got a ram stuck in a bush.
Okay, and look at the light coming from here. And look at the backgrounds here. This looks like Switzerland almost in the background with
Looks
So,
like
I mean,
a lake or something.
right,
Yeah.
right. It's very, very interesting here. But what the point that I want to make here is that there is a sense that the angel could have been responsible for the birth. All right, and here
Right.
you have here the angel, and this angel is quite masculine, right? And look at her speaking to him. There's a relationship. The eyes are looking at each other. And again, you have here too the birds in the background, right? The
Right.
same idea that you had before. Maybe Saraceni was basing himself on the picture here. Maybe he knew this picture. This is right. It's quite possible. We don't know. Okay, I don't want to spend that much time on art, although it's fascinating. But the point that I want to make here is that there's some justification for the angel, but not the angel, for the husband to be somewhat jealous. Okay, and here Mark Bretler, in his commentary, not a commentary, in an article that's in the Torah.com, which was called "Who Was Samson's Real Father?" Right? And he wrote, in both the Hebrew and the English, I have highlighted the key participle, the short word hine, right, which is look, or even wow, or behold, right? It is a presentative particle offering new information that should be highlighted. In the case of verse 5, that Mrs. Noah is newly pregnant, because look at the words. Hine, now here it says, Hinena at akara. You are pregnant, right? Or you are barren and you haven't had a son. And now it says, Kihinachara, the same word like hine, it's just directed to her, for look, you have conceived. How does this happen so quickly? Right? So who got her pregnant? Right? She's gotten pregnant very, very quickly. Right? So in other words, in verse 3, she's barren, and by verse 5, she is pregnant. And he writes, the only possible father is the angel. Right? So I based on there's other ways of seeing it, but now I'm not going to show this to you because otherwise I won't be able to. Maybe we could look at it afterwards. But there's a YouTube with the Yehudim Ba'im, where the husband is jealous, and it's an amazing one. Maybe I'll show it afterwards, but I can't show it now because otherwise I won't be able to. So let's look at the Midrash, which Nurit, and years ago I invited her to come here. I think she's even on the list, but she came to us years ago when I first taught this Midrash. She's an artist who's a resident, or she was an artist who's resident scholar at Brandeis, and she wrote this particular Midrash, which ended up in the book Praise Her Works, which I think last week we also saw a Midrash from Praise Her Works. And this is a very, very hard name to pronounce, Hatzlaponi, right? It's a very, very hard name to pronounce, but her name is Eshet Noach, right? What's her name? We don't know what her name is, right? So she gave her a name, Hatzlaponi, not she, the Midrash, right? Now, if you remember, Praise Her Works always has Midrashim, which are based on Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor. Each verse is a different woman. So this one is Sadin Astava Timkor B'Chagar Natna Lakna'ani. She makes cloth and sells it. Sadin could also be a sheet. She makes cloth and sells it and offers a girdle or a belt to the merchant. By the way, Kanaani could also be a Canaanite, okay? And then the Midrash says, gives her a name. She makes cloth and sells it. This is Hatzlaponi, mother of Samson. In other words, the Midrash gives her a name, okay? And then they take this name from one of the, from another verse, and we don't have to really go into it, but that's where the imagination comes from in Midrash Haggadah, okay? So this is what she writes at the beginning, that God summons a woman to stir the people out of their submissive attitude, right, towards the foreign ruler, and the fact that that God conceives a plan of deliverance, starting with a divine revelation to a woman who has not yet conceived a child, and this woman is going to create the Israeli national hero. By the way, as I pointed out to you earlier, for those of you who came in late, right, as I pointed out to you earlier, we have these stamps. He's a national figure, right? He was a national figure. And there were songs, all sorts of songs written about him in the early days. And so you have here, God collaborates with her. And one could argue it's the angel, right? God collaborates with her to, because she's such a special person, and that testifies to her virtue. And so she obeys God's rules, and that's how she's going to raise her son, because the angel tells her that he's going to deliver Israel from the Philistines, right? And she doesn't question God, she accepts it, right? She accepts God's, she doesn't say to God, what exactly is he gonna do, right? She doesn't ask any questions, but she does know that Manoach is gonna be a problem, right? And why is it going to be a problem? Well, that's a good question. Maybe he suspects the angel, right? And so the fact is the angel is alone with Manoach's wife twice. And only the third time does he show himself up. By then it may be too late, right? He's been alone with her. Now, what you also have to understand is that in this week's parashah, there's also the story of the Sotah. And the Sotah is the woman whose husband is jealous of her, right? And she has to drink of the bitter waters. And if she has been unfaithful, she will either die or her belly will drop or whatever. If she is not unfaithful, she will have seed, right? She will conceive. So this is the Haftarah also of that, right? Having to do with a jealous husband. So here we have good reasons for him to be jealous, right? And he's very interested. He wants to know more about who the hell is this angel. He doesn't really care that much about God's plan. He wants to know, who is this guy? All right. And so the guy says when you didn't read this before, Louise, and I didn't put it in, but the angel says, when he asks, what's your name? He says, my name is Peli, which can mean two possible things. One is wondrous, or the other is unknowable, right? It has two possible meanings, all right? And then what happens? The angel of God goes up in fire. And of course, Manoach is afraid, right? He doesn't say, oh, I was doubtful, and that's why he disappeared, but he's afraid that he's going to die, all right? And then the woman ends up saying, don't worry, and she justifies God's trust in her. She recognizes God, she understands the call, and that's why she is identified by the rabbis as Hatzlaponi, whose name is mentioned in the Bible once in the book of Chronicles as a descendant of Tamar and Judah. Okay, now we have the story. Whoops. So the story begins here. Let me see. Oh, there's also a commentary. Wait a minute, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Let me have some other readers then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think this is the end here. No, but we'll have someone read that as well. And what's this? This is something else. Okay. So let's go back. How many did I say? 8? I said I needed 8 readers. Okay, so Stevie, you'll be the first reader. Barbara, you'll be the second one. Francine, you want me to skip you? Louise, you'll be the third reader. Jill, you'll be the 4th reader. Joyce, the 5th reader. Jerry Lynn, what number am I up to? 6th reader. Toby, the 7th reader. And we'll figure out when we get to the end what we'll do. Okay, so first reader. This is the excerpt from the commentary. If you have troubles pronouncing the name Hatzlaponi, which I have trouble also, you could say Hazel.
The biblical tradition embeds intricate messages and names through wordplay. The story of Samson's birth is fully encoded in the name Hatzlaponi. In her name, Zalel is the Hebrew word that stands for a response to the sounds of God's voice. The letter L in Hatzlaponi is repeated twice. Pony in Hatzlaponi is a variant of panim, the Hebrew word for face. Hatzpen in Hatzlaponi means encode, hide. Peli in Hatzlaponi means wonder. Hatzel in Hatzlaponi stands for save. Zion in Hatzlaponi stands for Zion. As we have seen, the insertion of H in Hatzlaponi stands for carrying out God's plan. Therefore, the name Hatzlaponi in and of itself tells the wondrous story of a woman who hears the sound of God's voice via an angel appearing before her face twice. As the angel's name Peli can be translated as wondrous or unknowable, we understand that this woman will be educating her son to follow God's secret message to save the Israelites. This woman of strength embodies the concept of the chosen. As a woman, we sometimes wonder, how can we apply the awareness that we are chosen in a non-judgmental and respectful way towards people's differences? How can Jews today embrace a divine plan to restore national self-definition in the Promised Land without losing our empathy, ethical values, and human integrity? By the simple use of cloth and belt in She Makes Cloth, offers a girdle to the Canaanite merchant, Hatzlaponi's verse in the poem acknowledges such potential conflicts.
Boy, what about that? What you
Wow.
wow is right. Yeah. Okay, next reader.
This house on the path to the fields, the one bordering the vegetable garden, is where we women weave. We work as we tell our stories, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with tears. We have finished shearing the wool and preparing the flax. We have already made the cloth we need for our large family for the coming season, and we still have plenty to sell in the market. Resilience is not a new word for us. I trust it is not a new word for you either. So please sit down in my Donite home, refresh yourself with water, and let me introduce myself to you. My name is Hatzlaponi, and I am a descendant of Perez, son of Tamar and Judah. I assume that my name is novel to you. My paternal grandmother, my Savta, coined my name from Joseph's additional name, Safenat Pania. Your name comes from Hatspini, meaning conceal and encode, she would say. Hatzlaponi, your name and Joseph's name are like the fruits growing from the same tree. Joseph was called Saphenat Paneach, meaning the one who is skilled in decoding visions and coded in dreams. Joseph had the gift of deciphering dreams. Your gift, little blessed one, will be equally marvelous. My Savta delighted in talking about Joseph. It was an excuse to bring up her favorite man of strength, Judah. Remember, Hatzlapona, Judah was the one who saved Joseph. He was the one who said to his brothers, "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, but let us not do away with him ourselves. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh. As a virtuous man, he could never have killed his own brother."
Then she would wait for me to complete the story. I would say, his brothers agreed. When Midianite traders passed by, they pulled Joseph up out of the pit. They sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites who brought Joseph to Egypt. I was then rewarded with my Savta's praise. Hatzlaponi, dear child, you remind me of the wise Tamar. Blessed is the name of the One, and you will grow up to know as much as Tamar did about the laws of the One. Mother's discontent with my conversations with Savta used to puzzle me. Mother would mutter to herself, "This Judah was glad to sell his brother to foreigners," and she would loudly announce, "A Danite man would not have been humiliated by a woman the way this Judah was." The other women joined her in nodding and sometimes in giggling. Mother's clan is linked to Dan, while father's clan is linked to Judah. You might say that through the story about the wise Tamar, I was exposed to the unfortunate rivalry between these two tribes. Have you heard Tamar's story? Let me refresh your memory. I tell it as a tribute not only to my beloved storyteller Savta and the virtuous Tamar, but to all the women who would have liked their stories to be heard. Judah marries a foreign woman who bears 3 sons. The first son who marries Tamar is evil. He is struck dead by the one before producing a son. Although Judah's second son marries Tamar, as our law dictates, in order to produce a son on behalf of his deceased brother, he conspicuously chooses not to impregnate her. He is also struck dead by the one. Judah is distraught at the fate of his 2 elder sons. Therefore, when his third son becomes a man, he ignores the law and neglects to give his widowed daughter-in-law to his third son.
Tamar, who's living now at her parents' home, is determined to design a plan to activate the law. She inquires about Judah's whereabouts and waits for him on his way to the city of Timnah to do business. While disguised as a harlot, she succeeds in tempting him to have sexual intercourse with her. In return for her service, Judah promises a kid goat. Tamar insists on getting his seal and cord and his staff as pledges. As you know, these items confirm a person's identity and authority. And as you can guess, the harlot vanished and Judah could not retrieve his pledges. Later, when Judah learned that his widowed daughter-in-law was pregnant, he demands that she be burned to avenge the family's honor. In front of all, Tamar displays his personal items, and Judah proclaims that she surpassed him with her devotion to continue the family's name as commanded by the Holy One. He says, Tzedakah mimeni, which means she is more in the right than I. And that means I admit that I am the father. my passionate self to glorify Judah for his words on behalf of a woman and instructed me that he was a strong man for acknowledging a woman's superior judgment. Are you puzzled as to why I'm telling you the story about the woman Tamar in such detail? I've realized over time that this is no story. My son Samson listened to it has become part of the story. In his own way, Samson has kept Tamar's story alive.
I'm going to come back to that. I think that's very interesting. Now we have here something really very interesting. All right. Remember, she just was talking about what she's telling him and what he's telling him. So who are the two readers who are left?
I'm supposed to read.
Right,
Okay.
Joyce.
Okay.
I actually want two readers here. Joyce, you read.
Yeah.
You be the reader on the left side.
Yeah.
We've
And then
also
the
got
right.
Jerry
Yeah.
Lynn.
Jerry Lynn,
Yeah.
you be the reader on the right side. Okay.
Okay. Okay. I was telling him a story about a family man, and he heard.
Right. And now, Jerry Lynn, you read.
He heard a story about a man who married a foreign woman.
I was telling him a story about a man who could admit making a mistake.
He heard a story about a man who was shamefully overpowered by a woman.
I was telling him a story about a man who went to Timnah to do his work.
He heard a story about a man looking for harlots on his way to Timnah, searching for women rather than work.
I was telling him a story about a man who wanted to pay with a kid goat as a sign of generosity.
He heard a story about men giving goat kids in exchange for women.
I was telling him a story about a woman who used all means in order to obey God's law.
He heard a story about the value of trickery, how women desire to deceive men and use sex in order to strip men of their honor and identity.
Okay, we're going to come back to this. All right. We're going to come back to this because this is worth looking at. Toby, you want to just continue? And
as you can see, Samson's story is different from mine. He went on living his life accordingly, and he had his own relationship with the god of my heroine, Tamar. When I first saw the angel of Tamar's god, I knew that my time had come to live up to my name, Hatzloponi. I activated the power in my dear Safta's gift to me. How could I not have recognized the angel? Since childhood, I have been participating in the story of all the stories, spoken and unspoken. Women's stories have transformed my life, and my story remains a good story, even though my son had to die. Nobody could have guessed that my son's hair was a divine weapon against the enemy. It had to stay secret in order to protect his life. Who could have imagined that hair could be a gift of power to a man? I concealed it even from Manoah. Tamar's God and I trusted each other, but no one else. Soon, you will meet the rest of the women who reside here, including my unmarried daughters and nieces, my unmarried granddaughters, and my daughters-in-law. You are welcome to join us if you wish. You will find us trying to be compassionate when we have difficulty understanding. We are aware of our power to exclude and to hurt. Healing comes slowly when we talk. We keep talking. We want our stories to live and to carry our names.
okay, Joyce, would you read the last thing? A message
Sure.
from
Yeah. A message from Hatzloponi. I would like to share with you what I learned from my son, to be open to the world, not to run away from what is strange and unusual, but to get to know it. He tried to know the foreigners, to live amongst them, even to adopt their ways. The world was not ready for his vision. I wish I could have been. I wish I had gotten to know the woman Samson loved, Delilah. From what I know about her, we would have made a powerful team in the marketplace. Yes, I want to befriend the woman who betrayed my son. Like me, she never understood Samson's love, just as she never understood his desire to change the world by reaching out to foreigners. Like me, she probably didn't believe in the possibility of love across cultures and nations. She chose to prove her loyalty to her people, the Philistines, by delivering my son's secret to them. Yet don't judge her behavior hastily. If you were a Philistine, you would have sung her praise. Praise. Remember, Delilah helped destroy the enemy of her people. I hope you can understand my feelings and that you won't judge me harshly. I say this to you, and I say this to the Divine One in the Holy Land.
This is really really fascinating.
Yes.
And they have one more last thing here, and then we'll go back and we'll discuss the story. I think it's really worthwhile. This is a poem that could have been written, right, by Hatzlapone, all right? But obviously it wasn't. It was written by someone, and Pinkerfeld Amir, who came to, who was in Israel, not Israel, in Mandatory Palestine in 1920. And it's called Like Every Woman. Would you read that? Is Geraldine still here? You barely read before.
You have to take care of something. If you can have someone else read, please.
Okay. So Stevie, yeah.
Okay, could you make it a little bigger?
Yeah.
Okay. Like every woman, I belong. Like every woman, I am faithful. But strange speech lurks in the look of my lips. A strange spark glitters in the look of my eyes. For a long time, I, the one who belongs, bowed my head to the least of my loved ones. Now suddenly, sounds of spring. I'll scorn you all and straighten up. Oh, you'll certainly know I never belonged to you, not to any of you. I've been a free spirit and I'll stay that way.
Okay, so we have a lot of things to discuss here, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. I think either I'll do this next week, or because this is I have here what I call part 2, which is that Samson loves foreign women, and you can see pictures of his loving these foreign women. And here's Samson, Delilah, or maybe I won't. You know, this is Stevie sent me a whole bunch of pictures of the statues in Ashkelon. Are they still there?
You know, I went by the other day and I think they've taken some of them away.
That's interesting. Okay. So, you know, this is the story with what happened with him. And here is the ending of Samson, right, when he's blinded. And the boy who comes and helps, you can see him on the treadmill. Those of you who have seen the opera, right, this is a very poignant scene in the opera when he's, and here's the Rembrandt, right, where he's being blinded. And here's our friend, I forget his name, but we've seen his pictures a lot. The doctor, the neurologist, who I forget his name, but we've seen a lot of his, you know, his, it's called Samson's Eyes. Blind Sight is 2020, which is really interesting. And here's a picture of Delilah. I probably won't do this next week, so because but you can just see, just finish with some of the pictures that we have here before we discuss the actual Midrash. And our friend Alicia Suskin Ostreicher, who's been on our program occasionally, has written about this. She's talked about this. And she quotes Yeats, who I love to quote in connection with it, all sorts of catastrophes. And she has her story here, but we're not going to look at that. Here's some more pictures. I don't think I'm going to do this next week. So we might just look at all the pictures. Here's his alleged site of Samson's tomb up in Zorah Forest. And Leah Abraham, who hasn't been with us for a very long time, wrote a poem about the narcissism. The narcissism. She wrote this in 2017, right? I'm not going to read out loud what it says here, but you can read what it says on the side, right? These were her comments when we read the poem. I am a lion, wild, untamed, lover unashamed. In my locks, tinted locks, lies my power to devour my enemies. I am the honey and the bee, entitled to be me, but my jawbone of an ass will not tame the Philistines eternally. I am fire, the fire of desire, the fire of empire, the judge, to judge and conspire, till I fill the last scent and expire after a single sting of you, with you. Okay, this is clearly a very political poem. We're not going to discuss it because we're on, we can discuss it afterwards when I, and also we'll look at this. So what we've had here, let me just stop for a minute. What we've had here is a lot of, maybe even too much, different ways of looking at the story. Just to remind you, and some of you did come in late, we saw her relationship with the angel, that perhaps he impregnated her, right? We saw the jealousy of the husband for perhaps that reason. And then afterwards, we saw a different, very strong woman who we could now understand why she was chosen. And then she also turns into a somewhat, and very, very feminist woman who sort of, it's like he said, she said, he said, right? Where both of you, Joyce and Jerry Lynn, were reading before the she said, he said, and what you hear and how different people hear different things. So we can also go back and look at that again at that particular slide. But I'd like to hear what some of you have to say before we go on. So what I'm going to do, I see your pictures here. I have all of you in front of me. So what I'm going to do is just simply ask you if you have something to say in order, and then we'll go back if we want to look at something in particular. So Stevie, I see you first on the screen here. So you have nothing to say. Okay, Francine, you're muted, so you can't talk. Barbara, would you like to say something?
Yes, I noticed early on in the first Midrash or the modern one that we read, that it already put Manoah up as a weak person. So it was building her to be the strong one in the story. And we didn't read that part aloud. It wasn't one of the things you had highlighted, but I thought right away that was a different interpretation than I would have expected from the classic man is always the tough guy that you read.
Right.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe, he really needs to see, right? It's not enough that his wife has seen, he has to see, right? He doesn't trust her. And that's what I said before. I guess it's a little bit like gaslighting, right? If I didn't see it, it couldn't have happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? That's a very good point. Louise, I'm going in order of the way I see you. So I'll get to you, Joyce, the way I see you. So Louise, would you like to add something?
Well, I mean, it made me think of her in a different way because, I mean, she certainly was the strong one in the relationship, but when you see some of those pictures of the angel, it's like, to me, the fact that she stayed and talked to him as opposed to running away was pretty amazing. I looked at some of those fierce looking pictures and I'm like, I don't know that I would have stuck around. So, so she really was determined, and that comes through, from the very beginning, I think.
Right. So just to follow up on what Barbara said, so she's really brave that she stayed there, right? That she didn't back up. Yeah. Jill, would you like to add something? No. Okay, Joyce.
I was just wondering again, the story of a woman who can't have children, and then suddenly she's impregnated. And I really do think the angel, whoever he might be, is certainly part of who might have impregnated her. And it's very an interesting story. In verse 3, she's not. In verse 5, she is. Very fascinating.
Okay. Well, when we'll look at the Yehudim Ba'im, when after I turn off the I turned it off, we'll look and you'll see that it's really acted out that way. Toby, would you like to add something?
Just a little snarky that some of today's fertility experts, could maybe learn something, because also with Tamar, she knows him once and like boom, she's pregnant, and she with the angel and boom, she's pregnant. They all get pregnant so quickly. It's like, what's that secret sauce there? That's all.
Okay, that's a very interesting point, because she goes on and on about Tamar, right? I wanted to ask you, why is she talking about Tamar so much? Well, because Tamar puts herself out there in order to get what she's been deprived of, right? She's been deprived her, so she puts herself out there, right? So I thought the whole idea of putting yourself out, especially that picture that we saw earlier with with her breasts, showing, and that little angel with his dirty mind, if you want. Doris, I know you came in late, but would you like to add something?
Well, I'm just glad to be here. I have a conflict now, but I mean, at this date, but I always in the back of my mind think that if I can escape, I can come and join you in what little bit that, excuse me, Tamar, right? She's a fascinating character because she grows so much. Even the little I was able to listen to in the poems, they're beautiful, and the story.
That Samson's mother.
Thank you. I'm glad to see you all,
the
especially Stevie and you, Naomi.
fact that sorry that I'm interrupting you, but the fact that she basically chooses Tamar as her ancestress and goes on and on and on, and then says, but I would have expected her to say something like, just like she put herself out, I put myself out, but she doesn't go that way. She doesn't go that way. Geraldine, would you like to add something?
Well, I was pondering this great question, Naomi, and right now, no, I don't want to say anything. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go and let me just share the screen again, and then I will stop. And then 1 second, let me just share the screen again with this picture. All right.
I don't ever remember hearing this woman. Stevie said her name about 50,000 times on that first screen.
That's a little phony.
Yeah, there you go. Hazel. I don't ever remember hearing her name before.
Yeah, so neither did I. It's an obscure name, and leave it to the rabbis to go into finding an obscure name and giving it to this woman, and then giving reasons, for it, and then somebody can then later write a midrash about an unpronounceable name, right? So yes, don't worry about the fact that you never heard of it before, and you probably will never hear her name again either, unless I teach this again.
But there has to be something powerful in that thought alone.
Yeah, for sure. And she explains the name. She gives all these different references, right? She gave all these different references to the name, right? Where was it? She right? Look at she did this pony, panim, face, Spain, to hide, Pele, wonder. She takes all the names, Zion for Israel. She takes all these names and she creates this amazing, Slael, which is Sleel, God's sound. She also could have had Sail, which is like shadow. A woman who's in the shadow all her life suddenly is the progenitor of Samson, this very strong person. So you have a whole bunch of things here, that playing around with the names here. So what I said earlier that I wanted to show you this. So I'm going to, in order to stop, I have to go out, and so I'll continue. Let me just stop the.
Well, you're doing a good job, Stevie.
Yes.